Good evening, everyone. It's really great to have folks here. Um, my name is Jennifer New, and I am the Associate Director of the Obermann Center. And I've also had the pleasure of kind of coordinating the Humanities for the Public Good Internship Program for this summer and the summer before. This summer, of course, was a little different because it was all virtual. So, and I imagine that will come up a little bit in people's presentations. But tonight is a fairly informal chance for our 9 interns whose faces are up here right now to share with us their experiences and a little bit about what they did with their community partners and some reflection on what that means for them as graduate students. Just to give you a sense of how we're going to go through this, we're going to, in a moment, have a brief welcome from Dean Keller from the Graduate College, and then I'll give a short overview of just how the internship was set up this summer, and then we'll start going through student by student. And interns, just so you know, our goal was about 3 minutes, and so we're going to, in chat, give you about a 2.5-minute warning, just so you can maybe keep an eye on that. And then if you actually get in toward the 4-minute range, I'm going to actually very cheerfully ask you to finish up so that we have time for a little bit of question and answer. So that's just our overall procedure for the night. Any questions before we get started, especially from the interns who might be having any last minute questions that they just want to get figured out?
Jill was on here. Her camera's not on.
Okay, I think somebody has their microphone on who's maybe figuring some stuff out. Great, thank you. All right, so Dean Keller, it would be wonderful if you could join us here, and we have been so delighted to have the support of the Graduate College as one of the main partners on campus for Humanities for the Public Good, along with the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. And so thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm eager for you to hear what the students have done, and just welcome to share a few words.
Well, thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, Teresa, and all the folks at the Obermann Center. Some of you know that, well, certainly Jennifer and Teresa know that the Graduate College and the Obermann Center have had a wonderful relationship for well over a decade now, starting with the winter period, with the Graduate Institute for engagement with graduate students, and we were very pleased to participate in that inaugural event many years ago, and it's an effort that we've continuing, and we'd probably like to incrementally expand if possible, resources and infrastructure and mentoring capacity, limited. But we're really pleased that we can partner with the Obermann Center in this Humanities for the Public Good activity as well. The Graduate College is extremely interested in, I hope that you know that in exploring many career options for students. And one of the most valuable things that we've learned, and which, shouldn't be very surprising, is the experiential learning opportunities for students to participate in various internships in areas that are related to their doctoral work, but maybe not necessarily totally integrated into their work. So it's something that really helps expand your horizons. We're very grateful for all of the partnerships with Obermann over the many years, and I'm looking forward to hearing what the students experience in their work. I know a couple of you, Michael. I haven't seen you in a while, but it's nice to see your face. I'm glad you're one of the participants, and a couple other folks I know by face and name, but not necessarily connecting them all together. So I'm looking forward to hearing what all of you have to say about your projects. So thank you for letting me be part of the the activities tonight, Jennifer and Teresa. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here. Great, thank you. Ashley, could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So a few things I wanted to say before we get started. First of all, one of the viewing options that you have at the top of your screen, so at the top of my screen in green, I have you are viewing Ashley's screen, and then next to it is viewing options, and one of them is side-by-side mode. And that allows you to see who is speaking as well as see the slide. Ashley Chiami McNeil, who is my colleague and who is one of our postdoctoral fellows for the Humanities for the Public Good grant, is going to be kind of driving in the background tonight. Ashley, is there any other advice you want to give for optimal viewing?
No, I think that you have it covered, and I will try to do some spotlight featuring as we go through the presentations as well. And so if you haven't yet, the only other thing is if you haven't yet named or renamed yourself, that's often very helpful for, especially at the end of sessions when we might do more of a question answer session. So that would be something to do right now, if you choose.
And yeah, and that's just in the upper right-hand corner of your personal pane where you're appearing with the 3 dots and just giving your full name there. The internship program, which, as I said, started last summer, and we did it again this summer, and will be continuing next year for a 3rd time, is one part of the Andrew W. Mellon funded grant of Humanities for the Public Good, in which we are working with a very active and diverse group of staff, faculty, and graduate students to rethink what a humanities PhD could look like. And last year was really the diving in, researching, finding every possible example, idea year. And this year is much more focused on design. And we have sensed from the beginning that an important part of this program that will eventually come out of this will be some form of internships. And so these summer internships have been just a wonderful opportunity to provide some of the funding from the grant directly to students and to community partners for these opportunities, and to give the students a chance to be out in the field, actively applying what they are learning in graduate school, learning on the ground from these organizations about what their needs are, what obstacles they're facing, who they're partnering with, what the community needs. And I think you'll hear a really rich overview of the kinds of challenges they've been given and the kind of permission that they've been given to really imagine and creatively work with a problem given to them from their partner. So we had 9 UI graduate students this summer. They were all either in the humanities or what we have been referring to as a humanities adjacent PhD program, which for this year were 3 students who were coming to us from the College of Education. And we are meeting over the course of 8 weeks. This summer, it just happened to break down pretty much neatly June and July. And over that time, we are working with 6 partnering organizations. So Hancher, the University of Iowa Labor Center. So those were our 2 kind of on-campus partners. And then within Iowa City, Public Space One and a sub-program of it, which is the Center for Afrofuturist Studies. And then up in Cedar Rapids, we worked with the African American Museum of Iowa, the National Czech and Slovak Museum, and then over in Amana, the Iowa Valley Resource Conservation and Development. Next slide. So the expectations, and one thing I might point you to, and if either Ashley or Laura might be able to put this in the chat, is there's actually a fairly lengthy, detailed report of the internships. And within that, you can get a much better sense of exactly how time was spent by both individual students and all of us as a cohort. So the expectation was that each intern would be spending 30 hours a week on the internship. Now, that did not mean that all of that time would go toward being the work that the site partner was giving them, but it also included these other things. So every week we actually had this summer, because of being entirely virtual, we met twice a week to have cohort meetings. And these included a lot of career skill building, everything from how to do networking and informational interviewing, which was another expectation, to, for example, John McCurley from the Labor Center, who's here tonight, led a presentation on how to do oral histories, and somebody else led a grant writing session. So we tried to spread out the different kinds of training that might be useful to people in various kinds of either job seeking or the kinds of jobs these students were doing this summer, to help enrich what they were doing. And then also just during those cohort meetings to give them time to see each other, especially since we weren't seeing each other in person this summer, which was so very different from last year when we met less frequently, but had, you know, kind of a richer, more intense personal connection. Everybody was also reflecting every week to prompts on Icon. Everybody produced 2 different blog posts which are up on the Humanities for the Public Good website, and 1 short video that provided an overview of what they did this summer. And then this is actually a typo here. I said 3 informational videos. That should be 3 informational interviews. So where they were asked to go out and talk to people who were in a field that they were interested in learning more about. And these ended up being, I think, really rich experiences for a lot of people to connect with folks who I think they might not have pushed themselves to connect with otherwise. And actually a few really great contacts were made that way. And people also wrote a very short article intended for their department. So again, thank you so much to our campus partners, to the Graduate College, and to the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences for your assistance and support. And I think we're going now into our first slide. Is that correct, Ashley?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
I was
No,
still
that's
on
fine.
mute.
Okay.
Yes.
So I will, just so the interns are aware, each time, just to kind of help with the transition, just give you a quick introduction, and then you can take it from there and have fun. We can't wait to hear what you're going to say. So, and then I think we'll have time at the end for some questions for all of us. So the first person we're going to hear from this evening is Laura Hayes, who is coming from the English department. She was with the National Czech and Slovak Museum this summer up in Cedar Rapids.
Hi there, everyone. I'm Laura, and I was an education associate intern at the National Czech and Slovak Museum and Library in Cedar Rapids this summer. Of course, I only visited the museum one time. I did go a few times after hours to do some programming that would become virtual, but I did only, because of COVID, I really wasn't there that much. So it is a beautiful space, I'll tell you that if you haven't been. And so when I came into this internship, one of the things I really I sought the Obermann for in this internship for, is because I'm really interested in access and accessibility, especially beyond the college classroom. And so this takes a lot of forms. It takes accessibility coordination. It takes, working with diverse populations. But something I was interested in, the public programming. I'm sorry, this cat, of course, just opened the door. worked with in the programming department was their virtual COVID programming. And this was pretty new to them as it was new to me. So I came in very reliant on my teaching skills, which were very, very helpful, and my research skills. So I do not have a Czech background. I have been to Prague exactly one time, but I love to learn and I love to teach. And so I gave them these skills. So what I have on the screen here is kind of the words we associate with education or programming or even public programming. The verbs that we put on our resumes, the verbs that we think of ourselves as doing if we're, teachers. And what was important to me was not to just do these things. It was to do these things in a way that a college instructor wouldn't do them, or to do them beyond how I've been taught to think about them. And I do think I've had good teacher training. I enjoy teaching. I think I was really given me that. So when I went into this other situation and I was teaching people who were all types of learners, all ages of learners, from, it could be a high school student all the way to someone who's retired and is taking, a class on Czech history. And it was important to me that I had something to offer them as someone coming in, especially without a background in Czech history or European history. And that also I was creative and I was helping the team problem solve ways to reach people through COVID. This looks like a lot of things. Practically what I did is I did 2 workshops, virtual workshops, that turned into later 3 lesson plans that they're using virtually to give teachers for school this fall. I also did 7 movement videos. So they have an Artists as Activists exhibit right now. And so I went in, and this was where after hours I went in and I filmed in the exhibit movement, like dance sort of videos that thematically matched the art. So whether that was thoughts on breathing, thoughts on speech, like free speech, like how to make ourselves large in a space that's made for speech, how we feel small when when we don't speak, things like that. So I thematically matched the art, and we did virtual movement videos. I also did blogs and a reading list on the African diaspora. And what this really taught me was just doing things beyond the college classroom and thinking about ways and meeting learners where they're at in all different stages of learning, of life, of availability during the day or the evening. And it really challenged me in these ways. And so I think I was able to bring a lot from Iowa to it, and I took a lot away from it as far as how to interact with all types of learners.
Great, thank you so much, Laura. It was interesting over the summer because we were constantly having to figure out what the different regulations, both from each of the individual organizations, the university, all of our communities, the state, what was going on with COVID. So it was kind of a nonstop ride in there, and Laura referred to some of that. The other one final thing I'll say about Laura before going on to the next person, which will be Jennifer Miller, just so she knows, is I really appreciated Laura just talking about how much her colleagues at the museum trusted her, and that I think she had a similar reaction to many of the interns, which at first it was like, really? and very quickly then was like, yeah, this is good. I like this. And, kind of stepping into that role as colleague, I think was really beautiful to see happen. So thank you. All right, so Jennifer Miller was at the African American Museum of Iowa this summer. We'd originally actually hoped that Laura and Jennifer might do a little bit more together, and that just became much more challenging with COVID. And Jennifer has been in the Language, Literacy and Culture program in the College of Education. So moving to her slide. Great, thank you. Hey, Jennifer. You're muted, just FYI.
Hi, I'm Jennifer, and before joining my doctoral program in the College of Education, I had 2 prior careers. One was in the field of visual arts, and the second was in the field of English language teaching and learning. So those skills came through a bit in my internship with the African American Museum of Iowa. but I had never worked with a curator before, and my primary role there was working with the curator of exhibitions. So that was a new opportunity, and let's see, the African American Museum of Iowa is dedicated to preserving, exhibiting, and teaching Iowa's African American history. And they reach about 30,000 people a year. Most of the outreach and engagement has moved to the virtual realm, but they still have exhibits. And I was working to help establish several displays and public outreach and engagement over the summer, aligned with the exhibit you see in the slide in the upper left-hand section. The exhibit is titled Unwavering, and it looks at 21st century activism. Movements such as the Black Lives Matter movement, the Me Too movement, and sports protests, all in relation to the lived experiences of African Americans in the United States, with a special focus on African Americans who live here in Iowa. So my role, as I already said, was to work in support of the museum's curator, Felicity Wolf. And I did this by designing outreach and engagement projects, 2 of them, as well as 1 display that turned into 2 displays, possibly 3 displays, for their Unwavering 21st Century Activism exhibit. It actually opens on Friday. So this Friday, the museum will open, and the exhibit runs through next summer. So my goals with the outreach and engagement projects, as well as the displays, were to design pieces that were interactive. You don't want static things in the museum. We also wanted to design things that had, the displays had a dialogic nature, and they prompt people to discuss what they saw. So another goal was to increase local community engagement, which I think I accomplished by facilitating a project that was an arts event that took place at the museum in their event hall. Another goal was to create outreach opportunities for the rest of Iowa, which I tried to do through a virtual writing project and contacting libraries throughout the state of Iowa to help facilitate participation in this virtual writing project, which is ongoing. Another thing I tried to do, Laura mentioned, is provide multiple possible entry points and takeaways. And by that, I mean, you could have 3rd graders coming to this exhibit, or you could have retirees coming into the exhibit. So there's educational purposes to museums. There's personal enrichment and engagement, and designing things that were accessible on multiple levels and that people could take away wherever they're coming in. They can take something valuable away from the experience was really important. And then finally, fostering critical engagement, reflection, and active participation. So what did I do? The outcomes were multifaceted. First, as I mentioned, I designed an art event, facilitated an art event that was titled In Defense of Black Lives. This took place at the museum in the event hall at the end of the first month, which was June.
And Jennifer, I'm just going to pop in because you need to wrap up.
Okay, so I facilitated an art event. I designed a virtual writing project, which I mentioned, and it's ongoing. And I think this is helping my research by clarifying relationships between archives, arts, creative practices, and activism, which I hope to continue to explore by visiting the museum and seeing how people engage with the work.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And one thing I would mention that Jennifer alluded to was that there were many of the interns who had various, I mean, everybody had some kind of work experience, but who had not gone kind of straight from undergrad to graduate school and through. And so they were suddenly pulling in these other skills and kind of parts of their brain that were coming from these former jobs. And it was really exciting and fun to see them start to come together and kind of meld and weave and braid. So that was lovely to see with Jennifer's work. So next we'll hear from Delissa Edinburgh, And Delissa is also in the College of Education, and she this summer was over at, saying over at PS1 as though she was actually there. She was not, but Public Space One and the Center for Afrofuturist Studies, which is housed within Public Space One. And so, Delissa.
Yes. Hi, everyone. As stated before, my name is Delissa Edinburgh, and my site was the Center for Afrofuturist Studies, which is an art center that seeks to reimagine the futures of marginalized people by creating dynamic workspaces for artists of color. I selected my internship in part because a lot of my professional development experiences have been highly centered in academia over the last 5 to 6 years. And so I welcome the opportunity to build and cultivate my skills within a new environment. And so with that, I should mention who I worked with. I worked with a phenomenal team, although the CAS team is small. They're tight and they're welcoming. So Anne, Talmia, John, what stood out to me with the internship was how much they trusted me when I came into the internship with my responsibilities. I think this encouraged the confidence that I had in the tasks that I had to do, even though some were things that I've never even done before. So that was really helpful. What did I do? I did a range of stuff. I helped with the summer artists in residence. In addition to that, I helped with their social media presence, social media takeovers as well. And I also presented on behalf of the CAS at a Juneteenth celebration. One of the final activities that really stood with me was the planning of a reading group with Heckler, which is a transnational cultural organization. I got to witness a really rich discussion by artists, facilitators on history, archives, and memory. And it was not only witnessing it, but knowing that I had a part to play in putting together this discussion from the ground up. And so I was very proud of that moment, and also proud of the support that the CAS offered me throughout the experience. So what did I learn? I learned a lot of stuff from my internship. One thing that I learned, I would say I learned about artists, I learned about community organizations. I also learned about myself and the values that I have for not only myself in this moment, but for future organizations that I will be working with. And looking forward, I think right now I am in continued collaboration with the CAS. One thing from this entire experience that stood out to me was just finding value in the meaning of Black expression, creativity, and understanding how community collaborations can help to form a valuable foundation for that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Delissa. I'm seeing all these wonderful shout outs to you from your colleagues. And later on, if we have time, it would be wonderful to hear from them about sort of how your time and skills were able to let them do more work this summer than they would have been able to do. I know we heard that from multiple sites. I mean, it was such a strange time, and all the sites were undergoing, you know, all sorts of pressures, as any organization was, to rethink what it was doing. And certainly any of the arts presenter organizations were, you know, scrambling to figure out how to redo things. And PS1 has been just stepping up to that in amazing ways in recent weeks. Just even the photo that we're seeing here is outdated because there's so much going on in front of the house. But so to hear how Delissa and then other interns really were able to help this in this particularly difficult time to make programming more possible. So thank you. So next we will jump over to our Iowa Valley folks. So Matthew Helm is an English PhD candidate, and he and Jonathan Lack, so we'll just go straight from, well, I'll pause in between, but were both at Iowa Valley Resource Conservation and Development. So Matthew.
Okay. All right. So my name is Matt Helm, and I'm a PhD candidate in the English department. And this summer, I partnered with Iowa Valley Resource Conservation and Development to participate in what they called their Communities, Culture, and Culinary Traditions internship. So over the course of the summer, I interviewed community leaders across the Iowa Valley Scenic Byway, which is a 77-mile route anchored to the west by the Amana colonies and to the east by the Meskwaki settlement, in order to discover stories about food traditions. So then I shaped these interviews into a series of brief articles, culminating in a booklet that relates the culinary history of the region. Currently, the booklet is available as a PDF on the Iowa Valley website, and there's a physical printing on the way. And ideally, once the pandemic is over, travelers along the byway will be able to use the booklet as a guide so that they can go on their own food-centric road trips and to visit locations and sample the dishes that I described. So the day-to-day of the internship went something like this. I would have a call with Jessica Rilling, and we'd set the agenda to figure out who to talk to that day. And she has an amazing Rolodex of contacts, and so I would cold call people who lived along the byway. And I quickly discovered that even though the internship was now virtual because of the pandemic, people still like to talk about their favorite foods about as much as they like eating them. So that was nice. I decided on this slide to include an introduction from the booklet because I think it works as a little trailer for what's inside. So I'll just read a brief bit of that. This booklet tells the story of native food sovereignty and of transatlantic immigrant food traditions from Bohemia and Germany. It tells the story of the rise of industrial agriculture and of contemporary convenience culture. It tells the story of how, despite these advancements, people still hold on to the recipes their grandmothers taught them and their grandmothers before them. It tells the story of how food made with your hands is just that much more satisfying. Sure, we are what we eat, but we are also the conversations we partake in, the knowledge we produce, and the communities we build when we come together to share a meal. What follows is just a sample, a taste really, of what makes the Iowa Valley region so flavorful. So hopefully that inspires you to go download the PDF and check it out. I also wanted to mention a little bit about what from this internship I want to bring with me into my PhD work. So in the fall of 2017, I had the pleasure of taking Professor Doris Witt's graduate seminar, Writers on Food. And this course challenged me to consider how food functions as a literary symbol and a cultural symbol, as well as what our relationship to taste can tell us about who we are. So I like to view this internship as sort of the public-facing extension of what I learned in that class. I was able to apply food studies methodologies to my research on the Iowa Valley region, and more importantly, to translate those lessons into a document that will benefit those outside of the academy. Broadly, the internship encouraged me to make connections between literature and people living just a few miles away from me who have equally important stories to tell. So while I hope to return to food studies research in the future, my current research deals with how LGBT plus people use media technology in literature. So my time with HPG has inspired me to make connections between fictional characters and lived experiences of real humans, and I hope to interview actual queer bar owners and drag performers and sort of carry on this public-facing interview, interpersonal skill element from this internship forward into my dissertation.
Great. Thank you, Matt. One thing Matt said, and another intern who was at Iowa Valley last summer, Kathleen Shaughnessy, is that the experience of like picking up the phone and calling people and having them respond and just doing it again and again and again is new to for many of the interns. And I was so sad that Matt wasn't able to actually go, and I think he did drive the scenic byway, but not to actually go and taste all this food. So he wrote about, for example, kolaches, and he never ate one. But to provide a sense of somebody doing something similar was when Kathleen worked on a byway project the summer before. She went to 43 communities over the course of those 8 weeks. And one thing that she said improved were her driving skills. So hidden benefits of the internship. All right, so moving on to Jonathan Lack, who is also working with Iowa Valley RC&D, who were obviously for a second year were our partners, and we're just so glad to be working with them.
All right, hi, I'm Jonathan Lack. I'm a PhD candidate in the Department of Cinematic Arts. This summer, I had the pleasure of working with Iowa Valley RC&D on the Storytelling in the Food System internship. We wanted to tell a compelling, informative story about the work this organization does. So we created a 3-part sort of podcast-style audio documentary that we called Growing for Good, the story of Grow Johnson County. So for this, I interviewed staff members, growers, volunteers, historians, a food bank director, and a member of the County Board of Supervisors to learn about this really exciting initiative they have called the Grow Johnson County Project. It's housed on the historic Poor Farm, and Grow Johnson County cultivates a wide variety of fresh fruits and vegetables across 5 acres of land, all entirely for the purpose of donating that food to local food banks, pantries, and other hunger relief agencies. Johnson County has a pretty significant hunger problem. We have over 19,000 residents, which is more than 1 in 10 people who experience food insecurity in any given year. For those people, fresh, firsthand produce straight from the farm is really rare at food banks. So that's why the work Grow Johnson County does is so important, and it's why the space on which they grow resonates really powerfully. The Poor Farm was founded in the 1800s. It was a then progressive reform to the poorhouse or debtor's prison model, sort of a Charles Dickens era thing, where both the poor and those deemed insane by the state could live. They grew their own food and hopefully learned skills that might lead to a better life if they ever left the farm. This was the 1800s. The model was obviously imperfect, but by dedicating this site to modern hunger relief and community education efforts, Johnson County is making a really meaningful effort to preserve, understand, and build upon that history, the good and the bad. That's where Grow Johnson County comes in. That's why it was such a privilege to research this project, interview those involved, share this story with the world. We had to do it all virtually because of the pandemic. I visited the farm once at the beginning and then once at the end, but never got to do a lot in depth, never met any of these people in person, so it was all over Zoom. But it turned out surprisingly well. I hope the finished series, which just came out for the public yesterday, it's 3 20-minute episodes, about an hour of audio overall. I hope it will serve as an inspiration for others to get out and experience all of this and volunteer when the crisis has passed. It's a series about a complicated history and I think a fairly inspiring present in the work they're doing. And I hope it helps us think about the future and what we can all do to make it better. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Jonathan. And this was an exciting project in part because the Graduate Institute, the Obermann Graduate Institute, had actually gone at least 2 times out to this space and visited it, although in the dead of winter, often on incredibly cold days. And so we have had a relationship with this space and this project and kind of watching it grow, no pun intended. So then to have Iowa Valley invite one of the interns into this kind of historic storytelling project, just I think for Obermann really felt like a wonderful full circle. So so that was great. So then moving over to Hampshire, Emily Weider, who is in French and Italian, was one of the 2 interns who worked with Hampshire this summer. And so Emily, as you're ready.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Hi everyone, as Jennifer mentioned, my name is Emily and I'm a graduate student in the French and Francophone Studies department. I partnered with Hampshire Auditorium because I wanted to strengthen the connection between performative arts and experiential learning. Performing arts coordinator Chuy Renteria, fellow Obermann intern Cody Norling, and I planned and created content. That was the bulk of the internship. So from brainstorming to editing, I contributed to podcasts as well as program notes. And podcasting allowed me to engage with new people and even some familiar faces. I met Leslie Nolte of Coralville's Nolte Dance Academy over Zoom, and then I also got to interview my twin who was working at the Children's Theater of Charlotte in North Carolina. So we got to really explore just how the pandemic was affecting individuals and the arts in all of these different senses. And though confronting, that very scary reality was hard and continues to be, we found a lot of hope and creativity, and especially just noticing that the arts consistently offer a space for community, which continues to remain vital. And then I also tied Hancher's offerings to my personal academic reflections. In 2 writing pieces, I considered the effect of affect, or feeling, in different types of performances. So my first writing piece focused on the Hermitage Piano Trio, that's a chamber music group. And then the other writing piece was on C. Hervé Cubé's dance, What the Day Owes to the Night. And given that each spectator receives art uniquely, the writing pieces aim to provide just one angle for reflection and to encourage readers to embrace their own interpretations. That's definitely something that I struggle to do with myself. And then another challenge was just striking the right tone for the spectators, not professors, not for this academic audience who are going to be reading my work. 2, I wanted to pack as much of my initial research into my final pieces, but that just wasn't the goal. I had to kind of adapt my situation, and that was an enjoyable writing experience for me. So applying my research skills to this non-academic writing rekindled an interest in me in connecting to the community, because really the classroom is just a starting point for learning. The most fruitful exchanges are taking place far beyond campus. And to participate in them, I have subscribed to Hancher's email list, of course. I follow the downtown district's fairly regular updates, and then just following a bunch of places on Facebook too, seeing what the virtual events are going on, popping in, doing what I can. And really, despite the virtual format for a lot of these events, Hancher, like all the cultural institutions, continues to put people first, and that approach has reframed my engagement as a student, a TA, and an Iowa City resident. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Emily. First of all, I have to comment on what a gorgeous photo you found here of Hancher, and it just makes me so sad that I'm like not there tonight seeing a show. So, and then I think what you commented on, Emily, about your getting to work with writing in a different way, or returning to some kind of public writing that just hadn't been part of your repertoire recently because of the focus on scholarly writing, and what a joy people get from doing that is something that we've heard from a lot of the interns. So thank you for sharing that. So Emily and Cody Norling, who will be joining us next, I think may have had one of the biggest pivots, because Hancher had quite a bit planned this summer and fall that they really had to kind of turn their ship, and Emily and Cody, in somewhat of an exciting way, despite how hard it was, got to be part of those conversations and see what was going on. So Cody, if you could join us now. Cody is in the School of Music.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. As Emily mentioned, I worked this summer with Hancher's public engagement team, specifically working with Chewy Renteria on sort of projects related to public-facing efforts of Hancher as a wing of our university. But something I thought about as I was preparing this presentation was that throughout our summer work, one of the more persistent reoccurring themes was the idea of finding a place or meaning for humanities PhDs outside of academia. What is the value of PhD training in a neoliberal society? What do we bring to the quote unquote real world? While I perhaps naively hope that humanistic research can be conducted without direct economic value, I understand the value in communicating cultural products and processes to wider audiences. My situation is somewhat unique in academia in that the faculty of my musicology department encourages and indeed participates in public-facing work. Marion Wilson Kimber gives local talks about the historical women in her research. Nathan Platt is currently working on a film music podcast. And Trevor Harvey, an expert on recreational musical participation, organizes an annual neighborhood music event. They each bring their work into the public sphere and impact populations beyond the academy. So this is what I had in mind as I worked on a series of archive-based program notes for Hancher Auditorium. How can I turn my R1 research training into engaging content for public audiences? How can I have my musicological cake and eat its public-facing implications too? And as you see on the screen, oh, I see. You kept my animations. Thank you. Will you click the next animation, please? Yeah, let's click through the next 4 of them here. As you see on the screen, something that I thought about as I was working on these was how to turn my scholastic training into something that would be valuable to an audience member. As mentioned by Emily, one of our projects is working on program notes, and my series of program notes focused on the history of Hampshire's dance productions and sort of the importance it had to the community. So if you'd hit the next couple of animations there, great. So I wanted to figure out the ways in which I could take my archival sort of press reception based training and create something valuable to the audiences, right? Something that I can use to synthesize the relevant data using particularly online archival sources, including digitized programs from Hampshire and also digitized newspaper databases to create a narrative rather than sort of an academic argument. I think that was the biggest point for me, narrative as argument rather than academic arguments as arguments, okay? And I think the result was something that contributes to the concert going experience. It avoids what I call sort of the Wikipedia effect of sort of bad program note writing that I've read. And it also promotes the value of original research. And more specifically, the value that Hampshire and institutions like Hampshire has to the research mission and the research aims of an R1 university, regardless of what recent administrative decisions might say about that. So I just wanted to thank the team that I worked with, Chewy, Paul, Zoe, and Rob. I think I saw Rob was joining us tonight, for helping me along this path. It was really valuable work for me.
Great, thank you so much, Cody. It was a delight to kind of see some continuation of the work that started with Hampshire last summer. One of the interns, Mark Rome, his main task was writing, he's also in the School of Music, and one of his main tasks was writing program notes. And sometime during the year, we got this just delightful note from an emeritus faculty member saying that they were the best program notes she'd ever read. So, so we felt like we had done something joyfully contributive. So our final pair, Cassie Barron from the UI Labor Center, and Cassie is also in English. And then she'll be followed by Michael Goldberg who was at the UI Labor Center and who is also in the College of Education in Language Literacy and Culture. So Cassie.
I was lucky enough this summer to have my internship at the Labor Center. There it is, I'm just waiting for my slide. Right before taking on this internship, I passed my comprehensive exams in the spring, and in those exams and in conversation with faculty members who are helping guide my research, one of the major themes that emerged was depictions of women's labor in 19th century American literature. So moving into the Labor Center was a really natural fit to see how my research connected to labor as it exists today. And the project that I was focused on was planning and coordinating the kickoff event for the Iowa Women in Trades Network. And that network was designed to be a place for women who are in the construction trades to come and talk about their experiences and talk about the unique obstacles that face women in the skilled trades still today. So early in the internship, I developed customizable promotional materials that could be used for a variety of events, just plop in the new date. I collaborated on and presented at the pre-apprenticeship program. I had a really short presentation at one of the sessions, which was an incredible experience for me. And then importantly, worked on this kickoff event. So I designed those promotional materials and coordinated with local labor leaders And our guest, Tarn Gelling, was our keynote speaker at that event. She is the IBEW Director of Civic and Community Engagement. I also created a list based on women who had participated in previous events or names that were given to me from union leadership that I had contacted and cold called them, which was maybe the scariest part of this internship for me, to tell them about the event coming up and see if there was, if they were interested and if there was a way that we could get them to come to that event. It was a Zoom digital event, so making sure everybody had the tech was key. So I promoted that event through that call list, but also contacting unions in the area and promoting the event on social media. After the event, which was a resounding success, it was so great to see that come to fruition and see something I'd worked on this summer be so great and well attended. I followed up with all of the attendees with a survey to start plotting out next steps and what the network might do to continue being a great resource for women in the skilled trades and do some more outreach. So my final job at my internship was to schedule and create the social media event for the next Iowa Women in the Trades Network meeting.
Great, thank you so much, Cassie.
Thanks.
And I love that your note about the cold call. I think, yeah, doing the cold calling and setting up those informational interviews was definitely a nail-biting event for some folks. Let's just roll right into Michael. Michael was teaching tonight, but I think he is here. So thanks for being able to join us.
Happy to, I made it.
Yay.
Yeah, I worked with John McCurley and Shelton Stromquist. John works at the Labor Center and oversees the Iowa Labor History Oral Project. Shelton Stromquist wrote Solidarity and Survival, as a longtime professor here at the university. And Solidarity and Survival is a collection of oral history of Iowa labor in the 20th century. And we began the summer trying to figure out how we can build a digital education component companion to Dr. Stromquist's book. So the summer began with two historians deeply invested in labor history and me who knows a little bit about digital pedagogy and teaching and trying to figure out how to talk to one another about a topic and sort out our different ways of approaching the same subject. Once we figured that out, it was full steam ahead to create this sort of pilot or proof of concept of a website that would serve as an online learning companion to the book. We organized it around themes and landmark moments of Iowa labor history after discussing a variety of possible ways to organize it through the combination of the narratives presented in the book, the oral history project's recordings, archival information, and informational texts. We came up with a structure that could be entered in a variety of ways because flexibility was one of the key components we believe was necessary for a successful online learning companion. So users can enter it from a broad way or zoom into a specific time, place, or subject area, or even a specific person that they're interested in learning more about. And the website that we created using the tools available through WordPress serves as a template that can now be expanded with the help of the Digital Scholarship and Publishing Studio, who've taken over the reins and will continue to work with our model and use what we've created as a foundation to build this out. I'm really excited to see what can be done with it because I think we came up with a very flexible structure that can be added to and expanded in really useful ways. It was challenging at first to get a hold of what I knew and what I didn't know about both the subject of labor history and about building an educational website. As someone who's interested in digital pedagogy, really working through all of the conversations that need to happen before anything gets built was a fascinating experience, and one that will serve as I continue learning more about that topic. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Michael. And I think one thing that Michael really reflected on multiple times in some of his like icon posts, and it was true for other people as well, but the experience of being in this like very collaborative situation of working with both John and Shell, and then working with, you know, the digital scholarship publishing studio, and this kind of trying to listen to everybody. And it was a very different experience than many folks who are in the midst of a PhD and doing pretty focused solitary work. So thank you so much, everybody. We have 5 minutes. And so if there are questions here, I think people could either pop on or they can put them in chat, and I'm happy to then share the question out. So we can probably get in 2 or 3 questions here before we finish up for the evening.
Silence. Well, Jennifer, there's a question in chat.
There is a question in chat. I'm so sorry, I didn't see it.
Yep.
What was the most unexpected thing you learned from your experience? What surprised you the most? That's from Andrew. Thank you, Andrew. I'm sorry, I didn't see it. I think any of you who want to dive into that. What was unexpected? What surprised you the most?
I can jump in really fast. Something that Jennifer touched on this just a little bit, was not only how much they trusted me, but how much leeway they gave me. So I really could do like anything and then kind of bring it to our team meetings. And they were like, great, let's do it. Like, make it happen. Like instantly, I was a colleague. I was a professional. They had a lot of confidence in me, which gave me a lot of confidence in myself. And I was really expecting there to be a power dynamic, and there absolutely was not.
Anybody else?
Yeah, for me, one of the most surprising and unexpected things was the work I had to do towards the end of my experience redefining success. Because we ended up with something that is not complete, it's not front-facing, it's not yet ready for public consumption. When I watched a lot of my colleagues whose work ended up very front-facing and published in different ways, but it took some processing and reflection to realize that the work that we did do was necessary and important, and my experience and my perspective was important to get the project to where it ended up being, at a place where it can be handed over to professionals in the digital publishing field, and they can take off with it from a point that the thinking about how to deliver information was done throughout the summer.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And John McCurley, I'm seeing you nod a lot. Would you mind just if you have something to add to that? I don't want to pick on you unduly, but
sure. Maybe I should have been careful because I was on. No, Michael's absolutely right. I mean, we gave him a Herculean task, one that we just sort of had a light bulb moment on right before, days before he started. And thought, you know, we've always wanted to do this thing, and now we have this person who has all this experience in digital pedagogy. Let's take advantage of it, and just didn't really quite think through ourselves as a sponsor what was going to be possible in the amount of time that we had for him to work in. So I'm really glad that you know, that he feels okay doing what he was able to do, because for us it was it jumped us light years. I mean, you know, quite maybe I'll put it this way and then I'll stop, which is that the project's been going on for 40 years. And from the beginning in 1977, the vision of the people who started this project, which were members of the Iowa labor movement, was to be able to get these interviews, these voices out to a wider audience. And so that has been a struggle for 40 years. And in 8 weeks, he got us closer to realizing that vision than we have been in maybe decades. And so he should feel very good about what he did.
Thank you. Thank you. That's wonderful to hear. And it's making me smile as much as Michael's smiling. So another question that came from Brady Crean in the graduate college is, how did your internship experiences shape your future career plans? And perhaps, especially if there were any aha moments or shifts in thinking, how you were thinking about career, not necessarily what you would do, but maybe how. If there are one or two people who feel called on that one.
I think that with my internship, it's like looking at it, the experience has allowed me to think more broadly about my career, looking at broadly, because education was a center in a lot of stuff, whether it was social media, educating people through social media content, through reading materials, through awareness of wider art programs or artists. I realized how grounded it was in my work and how grounded it can be in work outside of academia. And so that was one connection that I made with my future career plans.
One other response perhaps? No. Okay. I think I see people who look a little tired, and it has been a long day, I'm sure, for many of us with being in this box. I am so sorry that we are not all together sharing a glass of wine or tea or something. If people who have their video hidden, and if possible, if you could come out for just a second. So I would really like to, first of all, thank the community partners. I think John might be the only one still on the call, but well, Paul is representing Iowa Valley, and they were just so wonderful in working with us and going with the flow of this crazy summer. And for me, it really gave me faith in the ability of the university and the surrounding area to work together creatively and to come up with things that would benefit all parties involved. So thank you so much. And then to the graduate students who were involved and the interns, it was an utter pleasure to work with you. And I cannot wait to see you all in person one of these days. So that is all I have for tonight. I would love any questions that anybody has that they want to send my way via email. I am very happy to talk more, and I'm sure most of the students would as well if you have specific questions later for them. So thank you, and have a wonderful evening and sleep well. Good night.